The amphitheater was huge. More than 3,000 students sat in rows that climbed up toward the ceiling. They came from 47 different worlds, each one bringing their own language and customs. But today they all sat quietly, listening to the same lecture. Professor Thelnara stood at the center of the stage. Her silver scales caught the light as she moved. She had 4 arms, which made her stand out even in this diverse crowd. She was one of the most respected teachers at the Galactic University, and everyone knew her name. Today's lecture was about Earth. More specifically, it was about humans and why they would never be welcome in galactic society. A hologram appeared above the professor's head. It showed a blue and green planet spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Earth looked peaceful from far away. Beautiful, even. But the professor was about to explain why looks could be deceiving. This planet should never have produced intelligent life, Thelnara said. Her voice carried easily through the amphitheater's sound system. Earth is what we call a death world, a place so hostile, so dangerous that most species would die within days of landing there. She gestured with one of her upper arms, and the hologram changed. Now it showed numbers and statistics, gravity measurements, temperature ranges, lists of predators and diseases. The gravity alone would crush most of you, the professor continued. The temperature swings from freezing to boiling. There are thousands of species of predators all fighting for survival. Bacteria and viruses that evolve specifically to invade living tissue. Natural disasters that can destroy entire regions without warning. A student in the 3rd row raised a tentacle. The professor nodded at him. "But Professor," the student said in translated speech, "if Earth is so dangerous, how did humans survive long enough to become intelligent?" "That is exactly the problem," Thelnara replied. They survived by becoming dangerous themselves. They learned to hunt in packs. They developed weapons. They fought wars against each other when there were no other enemies to fight. Violence became part of their nature. The hologram shifted again. Now it showed images from human history. Battles, weapons, cities burning. The students leaned forward, some in horror, others in fascination. "For thousands of years, humans have been at war," the professor said. "Not just with their environment, but with each other. They divided themselves into groups called nations and fought over resources, land, and ideas. Even when they finally developed space travel, they could not stop fighting." She paused, letting her words sink in. 20 years ago, humanity applied for membership in the Galactic Council. They wanted to join our civilization, to trade with us, to live among us. The Council examined their application carefully. They looked at human history. They studied human psychology. They analyzed human behavior patterns. Another hologram appeared, this one showing an official document with many seals and signatures. The Council's decision was unanimous, Thelnara said. Humanity was denied membership. Not only that, but a quarantine was placed around their solar system. No human ships were allowed to leave. No other species were allowed to visit. Earth was sealed off from the rest of the galaxy. A murmur went through the audience. Some students nodded in agreement. Others looked uncomfortable. This was not a punishment, the professor explained. It was a protection. The Council recognized that humanity was not ready for galactic society. Their violent tendencies, their inability to cooperate even among themselves, their aggressive territorial instincts, all of these traits made them dangerous. She walked across the stage, her movements graceful despite her multiple arms. Earth was left alone as a warning to us all, a reminder that evolution does not always produce civilized species. Sometimes it produces survivors, yes, but survivors who are too dangerous to integrate into peaceful society. The professor's voice grew more forceful. We must never forget this lesson. The universe contains many dangerous things. Death worlds like Earth produce species that reflect their environment. Violent, aggressive, unpredictable. The quarantine was the right choice. The only choice. She looked around the amphitheater, making eye contact with students throughout the crowd. Some of you might think this is unfair. You might feel sympathy for humanity, trapped on their world. But I ask you to remember that fairness is not the same as safety. The Council's duty is to protect all member species, and sometimes protection means keeping dangerous elements isolated. The hologram showed Earth one more time, spinning alone in the darkness. That planet is a warning, Thelnara said. A sign that we should be careful about which species we invite into our civilization. Not every intelligent species deserves that invitation. Not every world produces the kind of beings we want as neighbors. That was when the hand went up. It was in the back row, near the top of the amphitheater. The professor squinted, trying to see who it was. The lights were dim in that section, making it hard to identify the species. "Yes?" Thelnara called out. "You have a question?" The figure stood up. As she moved into better lighting, gasps spread through the audience. She was human. The professor felt her scales tighten in surprise. A human, here in her classroom. How had security allowed this? The human was young, maybe in her mid-20s by their species standards. She wore a simple gray uniform that marked her as an independent scholar. Her dark hair was pulled back from her face. Her expression was calm, but there was something in her eyes. Something sharp and focused. "Not a question, Professor," the human said. Her voice was clear and steady. An observation. The amphitheater went completely silent. 3,000 students held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. "I am afraid I do not understand," Thelnara replied, trying to maintain her professional composure despite her shock. The human started walking down the steps. Her boots made soft sounds on the stone stairs. Each step brought her closer to the stage, closer to the professor. The security guards near the exits tensed, their hands moving toward their equipment. "You said Earth was a warning," the human said as she descended. "You are right about that, Professor. Earth is absolutely a warning." She reached the ground level and walked toward the stage. Now everyone could see her clearly. She was small compared to many species in the room. Her frame looked fragile, but the way she moved suggested otherwise. There was a confidence in her stride, a steadiness that came from somewhere deep inside. "But I think you misunderstood what the warning meant," the human continued. She stopped at the edge of the stage, looking up at the professor. "Warnings are not just about what to avoid. They are also about what to prepare for." Professor Thelnara felt a chill run through her body. The way this human spoke, the certainty in her voice, something was very wrong here. "Maybe you should have heeded it," the human said simply. The silence in the amphitheater became deafening. Kate Morrison stood at the edge of the stage looking up at the professor. Every eye in the amphitheater was now focused on her. She could feel the weight of their stares, the mixture of curiosity and fear rippling through the crowd. Professor Thelnara crossed her upper pair of arms. It was a defensive gesture among her people, Kate knew. The professor was unsettled, trying to regain control of her classroom. "Young woman," the professor said, her voice tight with forced patience. "I do not know how you gained entry to this university, but humans are not permitted here. Security will escort you out." Kate did not move. She kept her eyes locked on the professor. 20 years ago, the Galactic Council looked at humanity and saw violence, Kate said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried through the silent hall. "You saw our wars. You saw our weapons. You saw our history written in blood and suffering. And you made a decision. You locked us away because you thought you were protecting the galaxy from us." The security guards were moving now, walking toward Kate from both sides of the amphitheater. But they moved slowly, uncertain. Something in the human's tone made them hesitate. "You are not wrong about what we are," Kate continued. "We are violent. We are aggressive. We have killed each other over land, over resources, over ideas that now seem foolish. All of that is true." "Then you agree with my assessment," the professor said, a note of triumph in her voice. "No," Kate replied. "I agree with your facts. But I disagree with your conclusion. You were catastrophically wrong about what those facts mean." She tapped a device on her wrist. A hologram appeared beside the professor's projection of Earth. This one showed star charts, but they were recent. Very recent. Military symbols marked several systems in red. Murmurs spread through the audience. Some students recognized what they were seeing. 3 months ago, Kate said, the Yarthek swarm entered the Outer Rim territories. For those of you who do not know, the swarm is a hive species. They do not negotiate. They do not trade. They consume. Every world they touch becomes empty, stripped of all biological matter. The hologram shifted, showing a list of worlds, 17 names, each marked with a red X. 17 colony worlds, Kate said. Gone. 3 billion beings dead or missing. The Galactic Council tried negotiation first. The swarm ate your diplomats. Then you tried containment. The swarm went around your barriers. Then you tried military force. The hologram now showed battle footage. Kate had obtained it through channels she would not discuss. The images showed council ships, sleek and beautiful, engaging with the swarm vessels. The bioships looked alive because they were. They moved like schools of fish, surrounding and overwhelming the council forces. Your fleets failed, Kate said flatly. Not because your warriors lack courage, but because the swarm does not fight by your rules. They do not care about honor. They do not minimize casualties. They do not retreat when damaged. They just keep coming wave after wave until you are dead. Professor Thelnara's scales had paled. How do you know about this? She demanded. That information is classified at the highest levels. Because 2 weeks ago, Kate said, the Galactic Council did something they swore they would never do. They sent a delegation to Earth. They came to the world you quarantined, the species you called too dangerous, and they asked for help. The amphitheater erupted. Students shouted in their native languages, demanding to know if this was true. The security guards stopped moving toward Kate, looking at each other in confusion. Even the professor seemed shocked into silence. Kate waited for the noise to die down before continuing. You want to know what humanity said? She asked. We said yes. Not because we forgave you for the quarantine. Not because we forgot how you rejected us, how you called us too violent to join your civilization. We said yes because when someone needs help, you help them. That is what Earth taught us too. The hologram changed again. Now it showed ships. Human ships. But they looked nothing like the vessels in the Council's database from 20 years ago. These ships were blocky and angular. They had thick armor plating that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. They bristled with weapons, but not the clean energy beams favored by galactic civilization. These were railguns, missile pods, plasma cannons, and devices whose purposes were unclear but obviously destructive. For 20 years you left us alone, Kate said. You thought we would fight among ourselves and destroy our own world. Or maybe just stagnate, trapped in our own system with nowhere to go. But you forgot something important about humans. She advanced the hologram once more. Now it showed production facilities, training centers, research stations. The numbers beside each image were staggering. We adapt, Kate said simply. When the Council quarantined us, humanity had a choice. We could be angry. We could waste our energy hating you. Or we could learn from what happened. We chose to learn. Professor Thelnara found her voice. What do you mean? The Council was right about one thing, Kate said. The galaxy is not safe. There are threats out there. The swarm is just one example. If humanity was ever going to leave Earth again, we needed to be ready. Not ready for exploration and peaceful trade, ready for survival. She gestured at the ships in the hologram. So we built. We trained. We prepared. Every human ship you see here is designed to operate in conditions that would kill most species. Our weapons are not elegant because war is not elegant. Our tactics are not civilized because survival rarely is. You militarized your entire species, the professor said, and there was horror in her voice. You became exactly what we feared. No, Kate said firmly. We became what you needed. There is a difference. A new image appeared in the hologram. It showed more footage of the swarm attacking Council positions. The Council ships tried to maintain formation, tried to follow their rules of engagement, tried to fight with honor and minimize collateral damage. The swarm just tore them apart. Your people fight wars like they are diplomacy that went wrong, Kate observed. You hesitate. You calculate acceptable losses. You try to find honor in combat. Those are beautiful ideals, Professor. But the swarm does not care about your ideals. They only understand one thing: complete commitment to survival. She turned to face the audience now, addressing all the students. Humans understand this, she said. We understand it because we had to. We are the only species that evolved surrounded by thousands of different predators. We did not just fight one rival species like most of you. We fought everything. All at once. For millions of years. We learned to be more stubborn, more vicious, more absolutely unwilling to quit than anything that wanted to kill us. Kate turned back to the professor. You asked why humans are so violent, she said. But that was the wrong question. The right question is, why are humans so hard to kill? And the answer is the same for both. Earth demanded it. The lecture hall was no longer a lecture hall. Professor Thelnara had dismissed her class early, something she never did. Now she sat in her private office with Kate Morrison across from her. The academic pretense had collapsed completely. Emergency council transmissions played on multiple screens around the room. Each one showed the same thing: panic. The classified information about the swarm was leaking. People across the galaxy were demanding answers. Explain, the professor said. It was not a request. Kate leaned back in her chair. She looked tired, like someone who had been carrying a heavy weight for a long time. When the Council quarantined Earth, she began, humanity faced a choice. We could be bitter. We could spend our energy hating you for rejecting us, or we could try to understand why it happened and learn from it. She paused, gathering her thoughts. The Council was afraid of us because we were violent, but fear is not always wrong. Sometimes the things we fear really are dangerous. The question is, what do we do about it? Professor Thelnara listened, her forearms folded in a complex pattern that indicated she was thinking deeply. We realized something important, Kate continued. The galaxy is not a safe place. You have built a civilization based on cooperation and trade, on diplomacy and peaceful resolution of conflicts. That is admirable. But it only works when everyone follows the same rules. She gestured at one of the screens showing swarm attack footage. The swarm does not follow your rules, and they are not the only threat out there. The universe is full of dangers, black holes, gamma ray bursts, rogue planets, and yes, sometimes hostile species. If humanity was ever going to leave Earth again, we needed to be ready for all of it. So you built an army, the professor said. We built a society that could survive, Kate corrected. There is a difference. Yes, we have warships. Yes, we trained our people in combat, but we also built better life support systems, stronger hulls, more efficient engines. Everything we did was about making sure we could survive in the worst possible conditions. She pulled up new files on the office display. Technical specifications for human ships. The numbers were impressive, even to someone who did not fully understand them. Every human vessel is designed to function in environments that would kill most species, Kate explained. We can operate closer to stars than you would dare. We can survive higher radiation levels. Our ships can take damage that would cripple yours and keep fighting. Because you come from a death world, Thelnara said, understanding dawning in her eyes. Exactly. Our normal is your nightmare. Earth made us that way. The gravity trained our bones to be stronger. The diseases trained our immune systems to be more aggressive. The predators trained us to be aware of danger at all times. We did not become violent because we wanted to. We became violent because anything else meant death. Kate stood and walked to the window. Outside, students from 100 different worlds moved between buildings. They looked peaceful, happy. She wondered how many of them would still be alive in a year if the swarm could not be stopped. Your people fight wars like they are diplomacy that failed, she said quietly. You have rules of engagement. You try to minimize casualties. You offer surrender terms. You follow honor codes. These things are beautiful, Professor. They show that your civilizations have evolved beyond mere survival. She turned back from the window. But the swarm does not care about beauty. They do not care about honor. They are driven by one simple imperative: consume and reproduce. Everything else is irrelevant to them. And humans can fight that way? The professor asked. We can fight any way necessary, Kate replied. That is what you never understood about Earth. It did not just make us violent. It made us adaptable. We can be diplomatic when diplomacy works. We can be cooperative when cooperation serves everyone. But when survival is on the line, we can also be absolutely ruthless. Professor Thelnara processed this information. Her scales had regained some of their color, but she still looked shaken. The council delegation that came to Earth, she said. What did they ask for specifically? Military assistance against the swarm, Kate said. They wanted human ships and human tactics. They wanted us to teach your forces how to fight an enemy that will not quit, that will not negotiate, that will not stop until either they are dead or you are. And humanity agreed?
Just like that?
Kate smiled, but it was a sad smile. It was not that simple. There were debates, arguments. Some humans wanted revenge for the quarantine. They wanted to tell the council to solve their own problems. But in the end, the decision was clear. Why? The professor asked. After how we treated you, why would you help us? Because it was the right thing to do, Kate said simply. When someone needs help, you help them. Even if they have wronged you. Even if they have hurt you. That is also what Earth taught us. Survival is not just about being strong enough to destroy your enemies. It is about being strong enough to help your friends. And sometimes about being strong enough to help people who are not your friends yet. She pulled up another display, this one showing the current disposition of human forces. The fleet left Earth 2 weeks ago, she said. 300 ships. 15,000 crew members. They are already en route to the Outer Rim. Admiral Henry Grant is in command. 300 ships against millions of swarm vessels? The professor sounded skeptical. Numbers are not everything, Kate said. Quality matters, strategy matters, and willingness to pay the price matters most of all. What price? Kate's expression became somber. The swarm wins because they are willing to sacrifice anything to achieve their goals. Every bioship is expendable. Every drone is disposable. They will crash 100 vessels into your shields just to create an opening for the 101st. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Humans understand that kind of commitment. We understand it because our entire history is filled with people who sacrificed themselves for others. Soldiers who threw themselves on grenades to save their comrades. Civilians who stayed behind to help others escape. Parents who gave everything to protect their children. You are saying your people are willing to die? Thelnara asked. I am saying our people understand that some things are worth dying for, Kate replied. Protecting innocent lives is one of those things. The council asked for help. We said yes. And when humans say yes to something like this, we do not hold back. Professor Thelnara stood and walked to her own window, looking out at the peaceful campus. I have taught xenoanthropology for 40 years, she said quietly. I thought I understood humanity. I thought the quarantine was protecting the galaxy from a dangerous species. And now? Kate asked. Now I think the quarantine was protecting a dangerous species from a galaxy that was not ready to understand them. She turned to face Kate. What happens next? Kate pulled up a star chart showing the Outer Rim territories. Now, she said, we see if humans learned the right lessons from Earth. We see if 20 years of preparation was enough. We see if our answer to the galaxy's call for help makes any difference. She highlighted a system on the chart. Cardus Prime. The swarm's main assault force is here. 3 billion civilians are trapped on the planet. The Council's evacuation efforts are failing. The swarm will reach the surface within 48 hours. And that is where your fleet is going? That is where our fleet is going, Kate confirmed. Straight into the teeth of the largest swarm concentration yet encountered. Admiral Grant knows the odds. Every member of his crew knows the odds. But they are going anyway. They are going anyway, Kate said. Because that is what humans do. When someone needs help, we show up. Even when the situation looks hopeless. Especially when the situation looks hopeless. Cardus Prime hung in space like a jewel about to be crushed. The planet's 3 billion inhabitants had nowhere to run. The swarm had surrounded the world with a living wall of bioships. Thousands of organic vessels that pulsed and writhed like a single massive creature. Council evacuation ships struggled to break through the blockade. For every ship that made it out, 3 more were torn apart by swarm weapons. The defensive fleet was in full retreat, their formations broken, their morale shattered into this nightmare. The human fleet arrived. Admiral Henry Grant stood on the bridge of the Defiance, a heavy battle carrier that embodied human military philosophy. It was not beautiful by galactic standards. It was a brutal block of armor and weapons, built to take punishment and keep fighting. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency. They had trained for this. Every person on every human ship had spent years preparing for exactly this kind of situation. Tactical report, Grant said. His voice was level, showing no sign of the stress he must be feeling. Swarm forces number approximately 4 million bioships, his tactical officer replied. She was a young woman named Sarah Palmer, only 23 years old but already a veteran of multiple combat simulations. They are concentrating around the evacuation routes. Council forces are down to 30% combat effectiveness. Time until swarm reaches planetary surface? 36 hours, sir. Grant nodded. He had known the situation was bad. That was why they had come. All ships, he said into the fleet-wide channel. Battle formation Delta, weapons free. Show them what Earth taught us. The human fleet did not slow down, did not send diplomatic messages, did not try to minimize the coming violence. They accelerated directly toward the swarm. The first wave of bioships turned to face them. They had been focusing on the fleeing Council vessels, but these new arrivals demanded attention. The swarm ships moved together, coordinating without visible communication. They were a hive mind acting as one. The humans opened fire. Kinetic weapons spat metal slugs at speeds that approached a fraction of light speed. The bioships had evolved defenses against energy weapons. Their organic hulls could adapt to lasers and plasma bolts, but they had no defense against simple physics. Mass times velocity equals death. The first ranks of swarm vessels shattered, literally. The kinetic impacts broke them apart like eggs struck by hammers. But there were so many. For every bioship destroyed, 3 more took its place. They swarmed forward, surrounding the human fleet from all sides. Second wave incoming, Sarah Palmer reported, counting 200,000 vessels within firing range. Launch fighters, Grant ordered. The human carriers opened their bays. Small attack craft poured out, each one carrying a payload of nuclear warheads. The pilots were volunteers, every single one. They knew what they were being asked to do. The fighters dove into the swarm formations. Unlike Council interceptors, they did not try to dogfight. They simply flew straight toward the largest concentrations of enemy vessels, released their warheads and tried to get clear. Some made it. Most did not. Nuclear fire blossomed in the darkness, dozens of small suns burning away entire clusters of bioships. The swarm recoiled from the attacks, confused. They had never encountered an enemy willing to destroy themselves just to hurt the swarm. On Cardus Prime, Council Commander Zephyx watched the battle through sensors. He was a veteran of 30 years of peacekeeping operations. He had seen conflicts across the galaxy, but he had never seen anything like this. "They are killing themselves," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. His aide, a young officer named Keller, shook his head. "No, sir. They are making a choice. There is a difference." The human fleet pushed deeper into the swarm formation. They took terrible losses. Ships were holed by bioweapon fire, their crews exposed to vacuum. Entire sections were torn away by massed attacks. But for every human vessel destroyed, they took out 20, 50, 100 swarm ships, and they did not stop. Did not retreat, did not break formation. On the Defiance, alarms were screaming. The ship had taken multiple hits. Fire suppression systems struggled to contain the damage. "Hull breaches on deck 7 through 12, an officer reported. "We have lost forward armor on the port side. Main reactor is operating at 70%. "Keep us in formation," Grant ordered. He watched his tactical display, seeing the bigger picture. The swarm was reacting to the human assault, pulling ships away from the blockade to deal with this new threat. That was the opening the Council evacuation fleet needed. "Sir," Sarah Palmer said, "Council ships are breaking orbit. They are getting the civilians out." "Good," Grant said. "Navigation. Plot a course to the swarm central cluster." The navigation officer turned to look at him. "Sir, if we push that deep, we will not make it back out." Everyone on the bridge knew what that meant. The bridge went silent except for the sounds of damage control teams working to keep the ship functional. "I know," Grant said quietly, "but we will make it count. All ships close formation on Defiance. Prepare for final push." The remaining human vessels, now numbering less than 100, formed up around the flagship. They drove forward like a spear, their point defense systems working overtime. The swarm threw everything at them. Thousands of bioships crashing into the human formation. But humans had learned to be stubborn. They had learned it from a world that tried to kill them every single day of their evolution. And they were not going to quit now. The fleet reached the central cluster, a massive concentration of bioships that seemed to coordinate the entire swarm assault. This was the brain of the operation, the command structure that directed millions of vessels. "All ships," Grant said. His voice was steady, calm. "Maximum yield warheads, simultaneous detonation. Authorization code Grant Alpha 7. His executive officer, Commander Lisa Hayes, input the codes with hands that did not shake. Around the bridge, the crew worked in silence. They had known this might happen. They had accepted it when they volunteered. "Transmission to all Council forces," Grant said. "Get those civilians out. Break orbit now." He looked around the bridge one last time. These people had served with him for 3 years. He knew their names, their families, their dreams for the future. "It has been an honor," he said simply. Lisa Hayes nodded. "The honor was ours, sir." Grant pressed the button. 73 human ships self-destructed simultaneously. The nuclear detonations merged into a single massive fireball, a sun born in the heart of the swarm formation. The blast consumed the central cluster completely, along with hundreds of thousands of nearby bioships. The remaining swarm vessels, suddenly without coordination, fell into chaos. They scattered in all directions, no longer acting as a unified force. Some attacked each other, others simply drifted, waiting for orders that would never come. 27 human ships limped away from the battle. 300 had entered. The crews had known the odds. They had come anyway. On Cardus Prime, the evacuation ships lifted off in waves, no longer opposed by coordinated swarm attacks. 3 billion civilians watched in stunned silence as human sacrifice bought them a chance at survival. Kate Morrison stood in the Galactic Council chamber, watching the casualty reports come in. Around her, council members from 30 different species sat in shocked silence. They had asked humanity for help. They had not expected this. Finally, Chancellor Morin spoke. They knew it was a suicide mission. Kate's voice was quiet but clear. They knew it was necessary. There is a difference. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from 30 different species sat in their designated areas, but nobody spoke. They all watched Kate Morrison, the human who stood before them, no longer just a student in a lecture hall, but a voice for her entire species. Professor Thelnara was also present, invited as an expert witness on human behavior. She looked different now. The confidence she had shown in her classroom was gone, replaced by something that looked like shame. Chancellor Morin of the Kelthri Union spoke first. His voice was heavy with emotion. The human fleet saved 3 billion lives at Cardus Prime. Our analysis suggests the swarm's offensive capability has been reduced by 70%. We believe we can now contain them, prevent them from reaching the core worlds. He paused, looking down at his datapad. This victory came at the cost of 6,000 human lives. 6,412, Kate said softly. We know all their names. Another council member leaned forward. Ambassador Threx of the Corthan Confederation was known for his diplomatic skills, but right now he looked lost. We owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid, he said. The quarantine will be lifted immediately. Full council membership will be granted. We will provide reparations, territory, resources, whatever Earth requires. Kate shook her head. We require nothing. The council stirred in surprise. Every species in the room knew how negotiations worked. You helped someone, they owed you. That was how the galaxy functioned. But surely, Threx began. We did not fight for payment, Kate interrupted. We fought because it was the right thing to do, because when someone needs help, you help them. Earth taught us that too. Professor Thelnara stood, her forearms spread in a gesture of respect that was rarely used among her people. It meant acknowledging a fundamental error in understanding. I was wrong, she said. Her voice carried through the chamber. Not just about humanity, but about what strength means. I taught that Earth was a warning about violence, about aggression, about danger. She looked directly at Kate. But Earth was really a warning about underestimating those who have learned to survive the impossible, about dismissing those who seem too violent, too different, too dangerous. You were not a warning about what to avoid. You were a warning about what we might need. Kate nodded slowly. Death worlds do not produce weak species, Professor. They produce species that refuse to quit. That is what you never understood about Earth. It did not make us violent for the sake of violence. It made us absolutely unwilling to give up, no matter how bad things get. Chancellor Morin rose from his seat. He was old by his species' standards, had led the Kelthri Union for 20 years. He had seen much in his long life. But this was something new. Then I propose something unprecedented, he said. Not just council membership for humanity, but a new role. The galaxy has grown comfortable in its peace. We have forgotten that the universe is not inherently safe. We need those who remember. We need those who can stand between civilization and the darkness. You want us to be your military, Kate said. It was not quite a question. I want you to be our reminder, Morin corrected. That survival requires more than good intentions. That sometimes protecting the innocent means being willing to do difficult things. That warnings should be heeded, not dismissed. Kate was silent for a long moment. She thought about Admiral Grant and his crew, thought about the 6,412 humans who had left Earth knowing they might not return, thought about the choice they had made, the price they had paid. We will accept council membership, she said finally, but on one condition. The council waited. You do not get to pick and choose which parts of humanity you want, Kate said firmly. You do not get our strength without our compassion, our courage without our belief that every life matters, our ability to fight without our ability to forgive." "What do you mean?" Threx asked. "I mean that 20 years ago, you quarantined us out of fear. You denied us our place in the galaxy. You made us outcasts, and we could hate you for that. We could hold that grudge forever. Some humans wanted to do exactly that when your delegation came to Earth." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. "But we will not hold that grudge. Because Earth also taught us this. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after. You made a mistake 20 years ago. But when you needed help, you admitted you were wrong and asked for it. That took courage." She smiled slightly. "So yes, we will join your council. We will help defend the galaxy from threats like the Swarm. But we will also hold you accountable when you make mistakes in the future. We will push you to be better. We will be your conscience as much as your shield." Professor Thelnara approached Kate as other council members began talking among themselves, debating the implications of what they had just heard. "I would like to revise my course," the professor said quietly. "To teach the truth about Earth, about humanity. Would you be willing to help me? Perhaps guest lecture?" Kate considered, then nodded. "Yes, but not about our wars or our weapons. I want to teach them about why we fight, about what we protect, about the fact that every human who died at Cardus Prime did so believing that those 3 billion lives mattered just as much as their own." "That is a very different lesson than I was prepared to teach," Thelnara admitted. "Good," Kate said. "Because Earth was a warning, Professor. You were right about that. But it was warning the galaxy about what happens when you let fear override understanding. When you judge strength by violence instead of by perseverance. When you mistake being dangerous for being evil." She gestured to the displays showing the aftermath of the battle. Images of human survivors pulling council refugees from damaged ships, medics treating wounded without asking which species they came from, engineers repairing council vessels alongside their own. "We are dangerous," Kate said. "That part of your assessment was correct. But danger is not the same as evil. A fire is dangerous, but it also keeps you warm and cooks your food. A knife is dangerous, but it also lets you build things and prepare meals. Danger is a tool. What matters is how you use it." The council session continued for hours. Details were worked out. Treaties were drafted. But the fundamental decision had been made. Humanity would join the Galactic Council, not as junior members or probationary participants, but as full equals. 3 weeks later, Kate Morrison stood in the observation deck of a transport ship, looking down at Earth. She had left this world 20 years ago as a child, part of a family that refused to accept the quarantine's limitations. Now she was returning with news that would change everything. Earth spun below her, its blue oceans and green continents clearly visible. From up here it looked peaceful, beautiful. It was hard to believe this was a death world, a planet that should never have produced intelligent life. But it had produced intelligent life. More than that, it had produced a species that understood both how to survive and why survival mattered. A species that could be violent when necessary but chose compassion whenever possible. A species that had been rejected and isolated but still came running when others needed help. The warning had finally been heeded. Not the warning the council thought they had posted. The real warning. The one about underestimating those who seem different. About dismissing those who do things their own way. About failing to see that sometimes the things that frighten us are exactly what we need. Kate pressed her hand against the window, feeling the slight vibration of the ship's engines. Down there, billions of humans were going about their lives unaware that everything was about to change. They would learn soon enough. They would learn that their sacrifice had been recognized, that their worth had been acknowledged, that their home, the dangerous death world they came from, had taught them lessons the galaxy desperately needed to learn. Earth was a warning. Maybe they should have heeded it sooner, but better late than never.